I was in the middle of folding laundry when my phone rang. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of quiet Tuesday where you think nothing can go wrong. The azaleas outside my kitchen window were just starting to bloom, and I had a pot of chicken soup on the stove because my neighbor Margaret had mentioned her hip was acting up again. That was my life. Soup and azaleas and folded laundry. Ordinary. Safe. Then my daughter-in-law called, and she was crying so hard I could barely make out the words. "Mom," she whispered. "Mom, I need you. I'm at the house and I can't, he's not here and I don't know what to do." I turned the stove off without thinking. "Cassandra, slow down. Where are you?" "The house. Our house. I found something, Mom, something in his desk drawer." And when I confronted her, she said, her voice broke completely. She said I had no right to be in this family. That Marcus only married me because he felt sorry for me. That my kind doesn't belong in a family like theirs. Her kind. I sat down on the kitchen chair because my legs stopped working. My son had been married to Cassandra for 4 years. 4 years of her bringing sweet potato pie to every Sunday dinner. 4 years of her laughing at my terrible gardening jokes. 4 years of her making my son look like a man who finally understood what it meant to be loved properly. And his father's wife, the woman my ex-husband had married 11 years ago, had looked her in the eye and told her she didn't belong. "Don't move," I said. "I'm on my way." When I pulled into the driveway, Cassandra was sitting on the front porch steps with her arms wrapped around herself, even though it was 68 degrees outside. She was wearing one of Marcus's old college sweatshirts, and her hair was still in the scarf she slept in, which told me she hadn't even gotten dressed before everything fell apart. There was a bruise along her left forearm that she was trying to hide by pulling the sleeve down. I got out of the car and I didn't say anything. I just sat down next to her on the step and put my arm around her and let her cry. After a while, she pulled back and looked at me with those red-rimmed eyes. "She came here," Cassandra said. "Your ex-husband's wife. Diane. She came here while Marcus was at work, and I let her in because I don't know what I thought. I thought maybe she was finally trying. She's never come to the house before without Marcus. I made coffee." I kept my face still. "Go on." She sat at my kitchen table and drank the coffee I made her, and then she put down her cup, and she said she needed to talk to me about something serious. She said Marcus's father had decided to change his will. That he's leaving the business, all of it, the real estate holdings, everything to Marcus, but only if Marcus agrees to certain conditions. Cassandra stopped. She said the first condition was that he reconsider his marriage. The word landed between us like something thrown. She called it an incompatibility of backgrounds, Cassandra said, and her voice had gone very quiet and very flat, the way voices go when a person has already done their screaming and is now just reporting facts. She said my family has no standing, no history. She used that word standing, like we were in a courtroom, like my mother, who worked 30 years as a nurse and raised 4 children alone, like my grandmother who marched in 1965 with blisters on her feet, like none of that counted as history. "And the bruise?" I said. She looked down at her arm. I told her to get out of my house. She grabbed my arm when I reached for her coffee cup. She didn't want to leave until I heard everything she had to say. I stood up. "Mom, wait. I'm not going anywhere yet," I said. "I just can't sit down right now." I stood there in that driveway looking at my azaleas blooming over the fence, and I thought about the 31 years I had spent being polite to people who mistook politeness for weakness. I thought about every church potluck where I'd smiled through a comment that wasn't a compliment. I thought about my son, who had his grandfather's hands and his great-uncle's laugh, and who deserved, more than almost anything I could name, to be loved without conditions attached. "Where is Marcus?" I said. "He's not answering his phone." Mom, I think he might already know about the will. He's been different lately. Quieter. He came home 2 weeks ago, and he'd been to see his father, and he wouldn't tell me what they talked about." I turned around. "Does she know you know about the conditions?" "She told me herself. She wanted me to know. I think she wanted me to be the one to end it. She said it would be easier for everyone if I made the choice instead of Marcus having to." Cassandra laughed, but there was nothing warm in it. She brought me a check, a personal check, from her own account, $60,000. She called it a gesture of goodwill. "Where is the check?" Cassandra reached into the front pocket of the sweatshirt and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I took it from her. I looked at it long enough to memorize the account number and the routing number and the date and the careful looping signature. Then I folded it back up and put it in my own pocket. "You're not cashing it," I said. "But we're keeping it." I called my sister Renee from the car while Cassandra was inside changing clothes. Renee is 64 years old, 2 years younger than me, and she spent 22 years as a paralegal before she retired, which means she knows exactly which questions to ask and exactly which answers will matter later. "I need you to listen to me very carefully," I said when she picked up. I told her everything. Renee didn't interrupt. When I finished, there was a pause, and I heard her set something down, probably her coffee mug. She's always got coffee, and then she said, "Tell me she still has that check." "I have it." "Good girl." Another pause. "You know what this is, don't you? This isn't just a woman being ugly about her stepson's marriage. There's a will involved. There are assets. This woman came into that house and put her hands on Cassandra and offered her a bribe. That's a paper trail, Dorothy. That's a paper trail she built herself. Dorothy is my name. I don't use it much anymore. People call me Dot. But Renee has called me Dorothy since we were children, and when she says it like that, with that particular weight, it means she's being serious. "I need you to get Cassandra to a doctor today," Renee said. "For the arm, documentation. I need her to write down everything she remembers from this morning, every word, in order, with times if she can remember them. And I need you to not call Marcus yet." "Renee." "Not yet, Dorothy. I know, but not yet. We need to know which side he's standing on before we show him anything." I didn't like it, but I understood it. The doctor confirmed soft tissue bruising on Cassandra's forearm, consistent with someone gripping her forcefully. The physician's assistant who examined her asked twice whether she was safe at home, and Cassandra said yes, and I watched her say it and thought about how many women say yes in that same careful way. We sat in the parking lot afterward, and Cassandra wrote everything down in the Notes app on her phone, every word she could remember, and then she emailed it to herself and to Renee. Renee had already found a family law attorney. She trusted a woman named Patricia, who had handled 3 cases involving contested wills in the past 2 years, and she'd set up a consultation for the following morning. "I keep thinking," Cassandra said, looking out the windshield, "that I should have seen it sooner. The little things, the way she'd look at my hands when she thought I wasn't watching. The way she always made sure to mention my mother's apartment, like the fact that my mother rents instead of owns, was something I should be ashamed of. I kept explaining it away. I kept thinking it was my imagination." "It was never your imagination," I said. "You just loved my son enough to try." "Do you think he knew about the conditions in the will?" I was quiet for a moment. The honest answer was that I didn't know. The other honest answer was that I was afraid. "I think," I said carefully, "that my son is a good man who has been put in a very bad position by people who should have known better. And I think we're going to give him the chance to show us who he is." Marcus came home that evening and found both of us in the kitchen. He stopped in the doorway and something moved across his face. Relief, I thought, and then guilt, which told me more than I wanted to know. He sat down at the table. "I heard from Dad," he said. "He called me this afternoon. He said Diane had stopped by." He looked at Cassandra's arm, at the thin line of bruising visible below the rolled-up sleeve. His jaw tightened. He said it didn't go well. "That's one way to put it," Cassandra said. Marcus." I said his name quietly. Just his name. He looked at me. "I need you to tell me what you know. All of it. And I need it to be the truth, because right now your wife is sitting at this table and she needs to know whether she is fighting this with you or fighting it around you." He looked at his hands for a long time. Then he told us. His father had called him in 3 weeks ago, sat him down in the old study with the leather chairs and the smell of pipe tobacco that had soaked into the walls over 30 years, and laid it out with the kind of calm that meant the decision was already made. The real estate portfolio, 4 commercial properties, 2 apartment complexes, and a land parcel in 2 counties, was worth a little over $4 million. His father was 68, and his heart had been giving him trouble. He wanted the business to go to Marcus, had always wanted that. But Diane had made it a condition. He didn't use ugly language, Marcus said. He never does. He just said that Diane had concerns about long-term family cohesion and that a strong marriage required compatible foundations. He said he'd give me time to think. "And you didn't tell me," Cassandra said. "I was trying to figure out what to do. I didn't want to scare you. I didn't want you to feel like he stopped, like I was a problem to be solved," she said, very quietly. He flinched. "No, never. Cass, I would walk away from every dollar of it. I need you to know that." "I believe you," she said. And then, "But walking away isn't justice. Walking away just means she wins and we're poorer. I don't want to just survive this, Marcus. I want to make sure it can't happen to anyone else in this family." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at me. "What do we do?" he said. "First," I said, "you're going to call your father and tell him you need more time. Don't say anything else. Don't tell him about the attorney. Don't tell him we have the check." I reached into my pocket and set the folded paper on the table. "And then you're going to look at what your stepmother brought into your house today and tell me again that you need time to think." He unfolded it slowly. He read it. He set it down. "She wrote this from her personal account," he said. "Yes. That means it came from their joint account. Dad would see it. He might already know," I said. "Or he might have no idea what she came here to do. Either way, there's your answer about which conversation to have next." Patricia, the attorney, had a small office above an insurance agency downtown and a way of speaking that was precise without being cold. She listened to everything, the visit, the bruise, the check, the conversation with Marcus's father, and then she asked Renee and me to step out while she spoke with Marcus and Cassandra alone. Renee and I stood in the hallway and drank bad coffee from a machine and didn't say much. "You raised him right," Renee said after a while. "I know," I said. "I'm still scared." "That's how you know you love him." Patricia called us back in after 40 minutes. She explained what she believed they were looking at: potential undue influence over a testator, which is a real legal concept when a third party exerts pressure to change the terms of a will based on discriminatory conditions. She explained that Cassandra's documentation, the check, the medical record, and Marcus's account of his conversation with his father formed the beginning of a record. She used words like discovery and deposition with the ease of someone who has said them thousands of times, and I watched my son's shoulders gradually straighten as she talked. "The goal here," Patricia said, "is not necessarily litigation. Litigation is expensive and slow, and it tears families apart in ways that can't always be repaired. The goal is leverage. The goal is for your father to understand, clearly and with proper counsel, what he has exposed himself and his wife to by allowing this to proceed. And if he doesn't care," Marcus said, "then we find out what he cares about more, his assets or his wife's behavior." His father called the next morning before 8 o'clock. Marcus put the phone on speaker. We were all at my kitchen table. Renee was there. Patricia had told us what to say and what not to say. His father's voice was steady, but there was something underneath it, a particular tension that I recognized from 30 years of marriage to a man who kept everything pressed flat until it couldn't stay flat anymore. "I heard from Diane last night," he said. "She told me the visit didn't go as planned." "That's correct," Marcus said. A pause. "She said there was a disagreement." "Dad!" Marcus's voice was even. "Cassandra has a bruise on her arm from where Diane grabbed her when she asked her to leave. We have a check that Diane wrote from your joint account, made out to Cassandra, with no memo. And we have an attorney who has advised us on what those two things mean together." The silence on the other end of the phone was the kind that has weight. "Son, I'm not angry at you, Dad. I want you to hear that. I think you got caught between what you wanted and what you were being told to want. And I think you're a good enough man to know the difference between those two things when someone lays it out plainly. So I'm laying it out plainly." Marcus looked at Cassandra across the table. She gave him the smallest nod. "I'm not leaving my wife. I'm not entertaining conditions. And I need you to have a serious conversation with your attorney about what Diane did yesterday and whether you were aware of it." Another long silence. "I wasn't aware of the check," his father said finally. His voice was different now, flatter. "I didn't know she went there." "I believe you," Marcus said. "That's the only reason I'm calling you before we go any further. I won't tell you it was simple after that. Simple is for fairy tales, and this was real life, which means it was slow and occasionally ugly and full of moments where nobody knew the right thing to do." Marcus's father hired his own attorney. There were conversations I wasn't part of, and some that I was. There was a period of about 3 weeks where Marcus and his father didn't speak at all, And I watched my son during those weeks and saw him grieve something that was complicated to grieve, not the money, never the money, but the version of his father he had believed in. Diane retained her own counsel. The case never went to court. What happened instead was a negotiated reckoning, private, documented, and thorough. The conditions attached to the will were removed. Diane issued a written apology to Cassandra, carefully worded by lawyers but signed by her own hand. The check was returned uncashed, which was a decision Marcus and Cassandra made together because they didn't want anything of hers. His father came to their house on a Sunday afternoon in April. He stood in the doorway with his hat in his hands, which was not something I had ever seen him do, and he asked Cassandra if he could come in. She let him in. She made him coffee. I wasn't there for that. Marcus told me about it later. He said his father sat at the kitchen table and looked at his hands for a long time, and then said he owed her more than an apology, but that an apology was where he had to start. He said he had let someone else's ugliness become his own silence, and that silence had cost him things he couldn't afford to lose. Marcus said Cassandra thanked him, not for the apology, or not only for that. She thanked him for finally seeing it. It is summer now, and the azaleas are long done blooming, but my garden is full of other things. Cassandra comes on Saturdays sometimes, and we plant together and talk about nothing in particular, which is the best kind of talking. She got a promotion at work in May. Marcus's father came to their 4th of July cookout and sat in a lawn chair with a plate of Cassandra's sweet potato pie and laughed at something Marcus said with a laugh that sounded genuine, which I was watching for. Renee asks me sometimes if I'm satisfied with how it ended. I tell her I'm satisfied with what we protected. The money is real. The business will go to Marcus eventually, conditions removed, as it should have always been. But money was never the thing. The thing was, my daughter-in-law sitting on those porch steps in her husband's sweatshirt with a bruise on her arm that she was trying to hide. The thing was a woman at a kitchen table telling another woman that she had no standing, as though standing were something you could revoke. You cannot revoke what a person has built. You cannot put a condition on dignity. My mother used to say that the most dangerous thing a woman can be is patient, not passive, not silent, but patient. Patient like a river is patient. It doesn't argue with the rock. It just keeps moving until the rock is somewhere else. I thought about that a lot during those weeks. I thought about my grandmother, who raised 8 children in a house with no insulation and sent every single one of them to school clean and fed. I thought about my mother in her nursing uniform at 6 in the morning and Cassandra's mother who did the same. I thought about all the history that gets called no standing by people who have confused inheritance with worth. We have plenty of standing. We have been standing for a very long time, and we are not done yet.